Welcome back to another episode of the Born Again Again podcast. I'm Katie.
And I'm Joe.
And this week we're going to talk about going back to church.
Yeah, so this past week first of all, we've been talking about this for a long time, that while we live in New York City, we want to go to Hillsong Church here at least once, because I don't know how it was for you guys, but for us, when we were Christian, Hillsong always made like the coolest music. We kind of pictured Hillsong being like the cool church.
Yes,
it
exactly.
It was all the Australians who were all like super spiritual and flowing with the Spirit and wrote really good worship songs and had really cool music and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and every time you were singing a worship song that was like from Hillsong, like is always the best.
Yeah,
music
right.
in church.
So we always thought Hillsong was amazing. Always thought it'd be cool to go there someday. But now that we're here in New York, we're right by one of the Hillsong locations. But we don't typically care about going to church anymore.
Yeah, and actually we've tried to go to church several times, but then every single Sunday we're like,
oh my gosh,
we're not going to church.
Yeah, that's the other part. We've been talking about doing this for months.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly that. It gets to Saturday night and we're like sitting on the couch hanging out. We're like, oh man, do you want to like get up and go to church in the morning? Oh no. So anyways, all that being said, we've gotten really used to having an extra weekend day. It's hard to make yourself go to church, especially if it's just for like research reasons, which is why we went this past Sunday.
Yeah, so we went to their noon service, and it's in midtown Manhattan. It was like
5 services,
crazy,
right?
In there, yeah, 5 services, like 10 a.m., noon, 2, 5, 7, I don't know. Yeah, so we didn't really know what to expect. Were you nervous to go to church?
I was really nervous because I felt like I was doing something wrong going to church. You know, like
yeah, I don't know,
because our point of going wasn't to go to like roast these people. It was honestly just to go and kind of see what it feels like to be back in church. Because we've been to church services since we stopped being Christian and since we've had this podcast and everything. But it's only been like, I think my parents' Christmas service. Yeah. And is that the only one?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a normal Sunday
and
service.
You know, Christmas services are different than regular Sunday services.
Yeah. More songs. So yeah, I felt nervous. I felt nervous to go. Did you?
No, I wasn't nervous. I don't know why. I was like really weirdly calm. I think because my brain was protecting me from like overthinking about it. And I just got like, I felt completely wiped clean of any thought.
Yeah. Oh, that's
weird.
Like perfect state.
I know. I didn't do this on my own. Somehow it just happened that I felt really calm.
Yeah. No, that wasn't the case for me. Yeah. And I was preoccupied and felt like I stuck out, which I'm sure, no one noticed us at all. We looked exactly like all the other, like, whatever, young people going into Hillsong that morning. And
we tried to guess, like, the people walking in front of us, like, they're going to church, I know it. And, like, I think we got one couple, right? I
think so, too.
Okay. Yeah, so when you get there, it's kind of crazy, and
It's really crazy,
We saw, like, these ramps going into the theater.
The Hammerstein Ballroom.
Yeah, and, like, so we followed it, and there's people outside guiding you, and there were 3 different ramps, and the person pointed us in, like, the middle 3, one or whatever, and then you go up, you have to go through a metal detector. I had to give my bag to some people checking inside bags, which I thought was crazy, but I mean, it's like in the middle of New York City, and people are weird about religion, but it just was such a weird experience, like, to be checked almost like going into a concert.
Yeah, right.
So then we got funneled, like there's funnels for everyone, and we got funneled upstairs, and we got funneled into the balcony area. I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted to sit in the front,
like with the really enthusiastic people.
Yes, but we went up into the balcony. I don't know, there were lots of different sections, and it was all dark, and we were like a little bit late, and the music had already started. Right. Yeah, but like still, I think people kept funneling in like throughout all the worship time.
Totally.
Yeah. So you have any impressions like at this point?
It was this whole experience was so weird. I don't know if there's a better way to describe it, but like I just felt so weird the whole time going into church and like walking up the steps with everybody else walking into church and everyone's like, a little bit late, so they're kind of stressed out. It just brought back so many memories of going to church on Sunday mornings. And like the way everybody is dressed and the way everyone looks and the way the pews or the chairs are all laid out, and like picking up a bulletin off the chair when we finally got a seat and sat down. It was just, it's weird. Like I forgot about all these little details of what it meant to go to church on Sunday. And it was just kind of a strange experience being back in that again. Like, not positive and not negative, really. It was just like, oh, I forgot about this. There's a specific way that you, like, do church. Yes. And I had forgotten about some of it. And when we went back, it was like all of that stuff kind of flooded back. Like, oh, yeah, I remember this. I remember this. So, yeah, when we got in, like you said, they were already playing the first worship song.
Oh, yeah, and it was really, like, a pretty happy, upbeat song.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And like we said, it's Hillsong, and so there's, like, the band is really good. It's a bunch of really cool-looking young people dressed really cool, and there's the stage is all lit with, like, huge studio lights and stuff. I mean, it's in, like, a ballroom in Manhattan, so it's, like, a really pretty old, huge theater.
Yeah. I took some pictures too, and I'll put them up on our Facebook group or our Instagram stories or something if you are interested in seeing it.
Some spy photos.
It looks like a church. But I took some pictures.
But yeah, so the first thing I noticed out of everything was they were singing the worship song. Everyone was pretty into it. It's pretty upbeat. And the lyrics were, "I'm gonna see a victory because the battle belongs to you, Lord." And that was like I don't know if it was a bridge or what, but that was like an upbeat climactic part of the song. And we kept coming back to that line. I want to see a victory because the battle belongs to you, Lord. And everyone's jumping and they have their hands up and they're pumping their fists and it's super loud. And, you know, it's powerful. It's like a powerful musical experience. So first impression, I remembered how much that Christian music talks about battle.
I know.
And like victory, and it reminded me basically about how, as a Christian, you, like, need to be worried about fighting all the time. You know, like, everything's like, the world is gonna oppress us, or, like, we need to stand up in victory,
and
or,
even
like,
singing
the
about
Father's
it.
gonna give us strength.
Yeah.
And it's like, those are good things, I guess, but if you're constantly singing about how, like, oppressed you are and how much you need strength for battle and, like, how you're gonna go to war for God and how God is going to avenge you and stuff, like, it's going to make you start thinking, oh, the whole world's against me. And, you know, it was
even
weird.
singing about it, the victory of it. Like, that's really positive, and it's really positive to sing, like, we're going to win the battle. But, like, it was coming out of Christianity, I was like, oh, there wasn't, like, a battle going on. And, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like, I'm not, like, winning at life compared to this other person over here.
Yeah.
Who maybe, like, I see, like, as losing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, you know, it's another, like, separator. Like, I'm a winner, you're a loser kind of a thing. Because you're always constantly talking about battles.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, the armor of God. Like, God loves battles.
God loves battles. I was into that when I was Christian, too. Like, we listened to all that Christian metal. And it's, like, all about battle and, like, cutting off the devil's horns and, like, fighting at the gates of hell and all this stuff. So, like, I was into that, and I can see how that's really motivating and, like, really gets you pumped.
Yeah, like, in a battle. Like, if you tell your soldiers, and there's, like, that guy who's standing at the front of the line of all of the horses lined up, and he's like, today we're gonna have our victory! And he's, like, running down the line, and he's, like, clinking everybody's swords. Yeah,
that's how I felt as a Christian listening to that. Exactly, exactly. But now, like, once we stepped out of Christianity, it was kind of a big realization, like, oh, no one was ever fighting against us. Like, people didn't really care what we were doing as Christians. We were, like, fighting against our own bodies. Yeah, we were. It's weird. So, yeah, going back into it, noticing, like, oh, everything is about battle and about fighting and about us versus them. It was just kind of weird. And, like, literally the first line of the first song that I noticed was this one.
Yeah.
And it kind of just flooded back in.
Because I wrote that down too. Because the God I serve knows how to triumph. I'm gonna win a victory.
Like a victory over what?
For the battle belongs to the Lord. Yeah.
A victory over sin? Even that. Then it's like you're saying it's like a battle against your own mind. It's just weird. There's a lot of battle talk.
Yeah. Well, we know what the battle is supposed to be about, but, like, now that it's, like, gone and it's irrelevant, like, we're like, why were we fighting so hard every single day?
Singing
like, just
these war songs,
like,
in
be
church.
light, be lighter.
Right.
We were talking about that worship, in that worship episode, how church starts out with kind of like a positive, upbeat song.
Yeah.
And then it goes into more somber songs. Yeah. And I looked for that, and it's exactly what happened. When we came in, we were in the middle of an upbeat song. And then the next one was a lot quieter. It was slow. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down some lyrics. It was, no one like you, you loved me through my darkest hours, Lord of my soul, King of my heart. And it was a little bit like slower, and it started quiet and the lights were lower.
They're always kind of like power ballads, because like it builds up to like it's slow, like more somber sounding music, but it's like a big expansive chorus and all that.
And if you're wondering if we sang the songs, we definitely
did. We sang all out. I'll say that I sang the first song just kind of like stiff, kind of figuring out how everything felt, and then the next song I started to put my hands up, which was kind of a weird experience. And by the third song, we're like speaking in tongues again.
Yeah, we did.
We'll get to that.
Full experience.
Yeah, we went fully for it.
I have a note.
Experience.
We also like were feverishly taking notes on our phones. Like I wonder. I mean, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm writing on my phone in church. Like, isn't anybody noticing?
I thought that too.
Did you?
Like I felt guilty.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like people are gonna think I'm disrespectful because I'm looking at my phone
people.
so much.
Yeah. So many people were around us.
Which was a funny thing to have that come up too, and I just realized like, oh, I don't need to do anything. There's no rules. I'm gonna write down on my phone.
Except, and also there were these two kids sitting like in the front row of the balcony section who were wearing huge headphones and watching shows on like iPads.
They loved it.
They love church. My parents would never let me do that in church. Are you kidding me? Like, so basically they're not getting indoctrinated.
Yeah.
That's good for them.
That is good.
It's like a protection.
Yeah.
Like a hedge of protection.
Right.
Okay, so I have a note in my phone at this point after the slow song started that I got goosebumps during worship.
Oh, yeah.
And one of these songs, like all of the songs were really easy to dance to or sway a tiny bit.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. I have another note here too, that all of the songs, they were about either battle or they were about standing in the fire, or like talking about waves crashing down in on me or walls caving in on me, and the Lord always being the one to save you from that. And again, it's one of those things where everybody has struggles in their life, of course. But the songs and the way it's painted in this Christian way is so like dramatic and so battle-like and so archaic, and it's just weird. It's a weird thing. And when I was in it as a Christian, I didn't really ever think about that. I just got really hyped on the songs.
Yeah.
But now coming back into it, it's like, whoa, it feels like you guys are taking things way too seriously.
Yeah.
If like the way you describe the problems in your life in general are like the waves crashing in on me and the walls closing down. It's like, I have problems just like anyone else, and sometimes they're really hard. But these songs seem really dramatic.
They make them seem very dramatic.
They make them seem like way worse. And they make them seem like you need some kind of omniscient God to like carry you through it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like about the end of worship then, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, maybe, whatever. I'm kind of jumping around here. At one point, I don't know if it was after worship or in the middle, but a guy came up and he welcomed the church. You know how they have someone come up and say, "Welcome to Hillsong Church this morning. How you all doing?" And everyone cheers and whatever. It was that guy. He came up, and there's somber music playing, and he goes into this long story about how, oh, guys, isn't God great? Isn't God great? Just this morning, we had a woman who last week she went into the hospital and she had a stroke. And yesterday she walked out of that hospital. Isn't God amazing? How much do you believe? Do you believe that God can heal? Mm-hmm. Do you believe he can heal? Because I'm telling you this morning, he is healing today. He is healing people right now, and he's healing people in this church. And
so convincing.
It's weird. It's weird because if you hear what he says on face value, a woman had a stroke. She went into the hospital last week. It's common, from what I understand, that when you have a stroke, you'll suffer paralysis. A lot of people will suffer like paralysis right away. That's severe, but after a few days, sometimes those original, like the initial paralysis state kind of wears off, and maybe you'll still be injured in some way, but like it's not as bad as it is the first few days. So just like that being said, a woman going into the hospital with a stroke, not being able to walk, and walking out a week later isn't necessarily something that's uncommon in medicine, as far as I understand. Again, I'm not a doctor, and if I'm saying something totally wrong, then feel free to call us out on it.
Joe, you're not a doctor.
But, you know, that's not a miracle necessarily.
But, Joe, he said, God is doing a miracle inside us right now, no matter who you are.
Yeah, so he said that. And
Can
again,
you imagine
big, powerful, somber music playing,
Yeah.
tons of lights, it's all dark in there, everyone's very meditative, and it's just,
It's appealing
weird.
for somebody who's like going through, hard times in life.
Right.
Like, if somebody is so strongly saying these things to you, like, I don't know. I don't blame you for believing them.
Right.
It's weird going back and seeing like how convincing everything was.
It's very convincing.
Like how manipulative, without them trying to manipulate. They're not, I don't feel that people in churches are trying to manipulate you on purpose.
Right.
But like if you, I don't know, that's just, going back, it's like, okay, that's why we were in this so long.
Yeah, right. Because it's
everything's different when you're in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The experience of it and everything. So typical, we had the visitors, like the welcome the visitors, you know, raise your hand, you get a packet.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, raise your hand, you get a packet. And in addition to that, he said, all right, the rest of the church, let's give a huge round of applause for everybody who's here for the first time this morning. So everyone goes crazy and
you feel
claps.
Really good being a visitor.
Right,
you're like, I'm special.
Which again is it's like nice, but yeah, it's a manipulative enviirment.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of emotions. There's a lot of swaying. Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put it. Swaying of emotions. Yeah, your emotions are
played with. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then I forgot about this church thing. I don't know if your church did it, but the guy up front, he'd be like, all right, next Sunday, everybody say next Sunday, and everybody says, like, next repeats Sunday, it. Yeah. He's like, we're gonna have a barbecue. Everybody say barbecue, barbecue. And like, it's such a, like, it seems like such a Southern preacher thing to do.
Yeah.
But, so like, they had something happening next Sunday. They're gonna be in a different location, and, you know, they come up and talk about like something you can join, like connect groups, or go downstairs and we're going to have coffee, tea, and free snacks. Who doesn't like free snacks? And like the longer we're sitting here, the more we're like, this is like youth group. Like church is like for children. Like why are they trying to trick me with free snacks? Like I'm an adult now. I got some snacks in my house. I'll just stay home, you know?
Prime now some snacks if I want.
It was just like so strange. Like in the first like 10 minutes where like church hasn't changed.
No, yeah, that was a weird thing too. Realized right away that we haven't been in church for 4 years.
I guess it is true that God is unchanging.
Turns out. But yeah, we haven't been in church for 4 years, and my first thought was, I haven't missed anything. Like it's exactly the same thing as it used to be.
And that continues as a theme.
Yeah. So after worship, after those announcements, we kind of went back into another more somber song, and then transitioned into the offering time. And I swear we could feel it coming because things kind of got somber and got a little darker. And I think some of the musicians left the stage, and there were some left up on there playing still. And the guy came back up again. And one thing he said really caught me. He said, we are a generous church and we serve a generous God. And so let's get ready to give. And I thought, that's kind of, I don't know, it seems like a weird statement. If God's so generous, then why does he need us to give him all of our money? I don't know. It seemed weird.
It seems like strange now that like, I was reading something about this. Oh, somebody posted something on our Facebook group, shout out, like how narcissistic God is, that he needs our worship.
Oh, yeah.
And that he needs our money.
He needs our money, and he needs a lot from us.
And it's weird. Apparently. It's like, if I were to imagine a God, he wouldn't need anything from me.
Right.
Like a perfect God. Yeah. Like I don't know, if I could like think of someone who actually was really God, there would be no judgment. I would need to make no decision. I would need to give nothing. Right. Like I would just be unconditionally loved.
Yeah, right.
Without doing anything, and I would never have to feel like convicted or guilty to do anything.
Yeah, that sounds like a good God.
I would be loved in like how a parent would love me.
Yeah, right.
I feel.
No fear. Before the offering, they read Proverbs 11:24, which actually, Katie, could you look that up?
Sure.
And if you're following along with us, everyone can turn to Proverbs 11:24, and Katie will read it for us. Before she gets to that, there was also a girl who came up, and this is all happening before the offering. It was kind of a long, drawn-out process. But so after that guy came up and he said that we serve a generous God, so we should get ready to give money to him, a different girl came up and she told us about a 5-minute personal story to encourage us to give even more. And she explained that when we give, God blesses it and it expands our world. And she said, and this is kind of insulting too, it's not about what you can give, it's about what you can sacrifice. Which felt like, I don't know, kind of guilt trippy to me. Cause like when I hear that, I think like, well, I don't have like a lot of money, but if it was really a sacrifice, I probably could like give more. And that brought back all those feelings. Cause I remember hearing that message in church before, like your giving is a sacrifice. And like, if it hurts, that's good. You know, like in a way it kind of should hurt a little bit to give, because that means that you're really devoted to God, which now is just so offensive, you know, that's how it would have to be. Yeah. And then the girl prayed and she kept saying, we thank you, God, for the opportunity to give. And I thought that was so bizarre. Yeah. She's like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean, thanks God so much that we're like allowed to give our money to you?
It's weird because a lot of these things we've heard so many times, so we haven't had the opportunity to think about them while they're happening, because like live.
We heard this stuff all the time as well, like when we were Christians, and it did really pull at my heart when someone said like, thank God we have the opportunity to give, and like your giving should be a sacrifice and it should mean something to you. When I was a Christian, that really like encouraged me to give, you know, and it made me feel like the fact that I'm kind of hurting by giving my money away in this way is a good thing, and I shouldn't be selfish. That shouldn't be a red flag for me. That should be like a green flag. Like you should feel that, you know? And so it's weird coming back now from this outside perspective, and just all of this stuff landing in a completely different way. So do you have Proverbs 11:24?
Yes, I do. I'm reading from the ESV. So it says, one gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want.
That's so bizarre.
That verse was
That's like a prosperity preacher verse to me, isn't it? It's kind of saying like, he who gives is going to get richer and he who doesn't give is going to get poorer.
Yeah.
I thought that was weird. When he read it out, I was like, wait a minute, that sounds kind of weird. Because the announcement guy, just kind of said it in passing before he prayed and before he invited that girl up. And it stuck in my mind. Like, that's kind of a weird verse to say right now. Whatever.
So far there were two speeches about giving. So there was the man, the guy, the announcement guy, and then there was this woman who came up and gave the personal story and prayed.
So then next,
there was another thing about giving. It was a video that they played, and it was, I think, more about giving to they're maybe more of like a missionary team.
Yeah. So the lights went down, the video came on, and it started out with a special video playing some music. There was a lot of footage of rubble, of crushed buildings, of like little sad kids huddled together and stuff like that. And then a guy came up and started talking about what they were doing.
Like a project. It was like a project in the Middle East.
Yeah.
To give livestock or to families, right?
Right, so that they could make a living.
It was good.
Yeah, it was like a good thing, for sure.
But it was strange because throughout the whole video, and I mean, it ended, and there was no mention of God. It seemed like, look at what we're doing, we're so good.
Right.
Sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Which is strange, like, now that we're out, we realize that, like, atheist people, like, have just as many organizations as Christian people.
Yeah.
And like they're doing the exact same things. There's tons of humanists, everywhere.
Yeah, doing great stuff.
I felt that this video was just humanistic. It was nice, you know, and it was strange that they didn't say anything about, look what God's doing. They kept saying like, we did this and this was able to happen because we were able to help this man.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, if I was a Christian, I would have been offended by that because I would have thought like, you are putting all of the glory on yourselves and like none on God. Like do you even need God? Like, you're being selfish. Like, you're taking all of the fame right now.
Right.
And but like seeing it now from this perspective is like, that's true, we don't need God to be good. Like these people are just good.
Like, if you want to help these people have jobs and bring livestock to them, then what you do is you go over there and you bring livestock to them.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you do. You don't need God to do that.
Yes.
And like, the video kind of showed that. But again, in this context, like being totally buffered by prayer and spiritual and like Christian stories right before it. And then they play the video. And then again, resuming that afterwards, it felt like it fit in to everything. Like the guy coming up made me feel like I needed to give. Then when the girl came up and told her story and said that other stuff, that made me feel like I needed to give even more. And then the video played and showed all like the sad, really impoverished people. And I felt like I needed to give again, even more. And then as the video ended, the original announcement man came back up one more time and he was explaining that, like, for those of you who work in the world, And he said, like, when I used to work in the world, I would always wonder, like, what am I doing with my life? What's the point of what I'm doing? Just sitting here making money for myself, and it's not serving God. He said, you need to know, and you need to truly believe in your heart that your work is, or that your giving to the church is what's making a difference in the Christian world. So, like, basically don't worry about how you feel like your work doesn't have any purpose. Your money is what's helping God here.
Yeah,
which again, I've heard that a ton, you know, as a Christian.
That, like, that's where you can, like, do good.
Yeah,
like, you can do humanitarian work.
Yes, that's kind of what it was.
Just give money and stay in your homes.
Yeah, like, so even though you can't maybe go to the Middle East and, like, bring livestock to these people, don't worry that you feel unfulfilled in your desk job, because your money is what we really need. And by making that money, you're still doing God's work. So I understand where they're coming from. I understand how, like, these things need money to operate. That all makes total sense to me. But it was weird going through this whole progression of them, like, priming us over and over and over and over again to give, and, like, getting us ready and open to give our money to the church.
It was a long section.
It was really long. Until finally there was another prayer, and then they pass around the offering plates while, like, the somber music plays again.
And one thing that he said, right at the end was, the enemy wants to make you feel like you're not doing anything, even if you're giving.
Oh,
and
dang.
I thought it was interesting that, I think, you know, cause sometimes I'm curious, you know, like, why do we fear, like, Satan, or why do we think there's an enemy so much? And, like, because of this, like, like a little drop of his name, you know, like,
it's
the enemy,
all little subtle stuff, right?
You know, the enemy wants to make you feel this way. Like, you feel guilty because of the enemy. Yeah. You know, like, you feel bad because of the enemy. Yeah. You know, and never because of anything else. And so it was, like, interesting. I was looking out for that today.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, like you said, another little slow, song started. I wrote down a few lyrics. There's another in the fire was part of the word. So, like, fire and
so if you're, like, living your life feeling
and,
like you're on fire burning, you can take comfort knowing that God is also burning there with you.
I'm not saying what the lyrics meant. That's all I wrote down, so don't interpret it. But that's just, like, it was more about fire. It's like about fire burning,
I always really liked songs
victory.
About fire when I was Christian.
Yeah.
Because, like, let your fire come down and stuff. I don't know why that really resonated with me when I was Christian.
That's
and I
super
felt like,
Pentecostal charismatic.
Yeah, it probably is. But I always thought that was really cool.
So as we were singing the song, the girl next to me raised her hands, and I had this moment and then became aware of it, where I felt, like, really competitive. I was like, what, she's a better Christian than me? And I was like, wait, what? I'm not Christian. But then I put my hands up too. And I tried to do better than her. Like, I tried to play into the competition. So she only had her hands up halfway. I put them all the way up.
Whoa.
And right when I put them all the way up, this is really interesting. When I put them all the way up, both hands, a golden light from stage, like one of the spotlights, like, turned on right out into the crowd and shone on my arms. And, like, right when I raised my hands. Yeah. So I was like, as a Christian, I would have interpreted this as a sign from God, like, just a subtle sign. Like, I'm not crazy, but, like, a subtle sign that, like, God was thanking me for giving my all, like, putting my hands all the way up. Like, I'm all in for God. And then, like, that light shone on me.
That's crazy. Yeah. I would have interpreted that the same way, or, like, at least it would have been significant that happened, you know? It is weird how when I was putting my hands up too, I felt those same like, kind of clenched stomach feeling. Like, I feel a little embarrassed putting my hands up, but God is worth it. That's what I used to always think. And now I felt the same. Like, I feel a little embarrassed putting my hands up, but I really want to, like, experience this fully. Yeah. You know, so that's why we did it. You know, we're not trying to mock anyone, but we wanted to experience worship, like, fully, just as we did before when we were Christians, to just see what it felt like and see what it was like to be in that environment again.
And you, like, feel the same, but it's strange without, like, how do I say this? Like, without the belief.
Yeah. It's weird, like, having your hands up and singing and feeling, I'm doing air quotes, the presence of God.
And everyone around you is
everyone
doing
else
it
is
too.
doing it too. It's like magical. You can hear everyone singing around you. Everyone's singing loud and like powerfully. And, you know, you put your hands up, which is like a little bit of a leap of faith or kind of going out of your comfort zone to do that. And so it was like a feeling of an uplifted feeling, worshiping. And it felt good. It felt good to sing. When I was in church singing, I actually had a thought about someone on our Facebook group mentioned that they really want to like do like a worship service, but it be totally secular. Because the experience of singing with 1,000 or 1,500 other people with your hands up with loud music and lights, singing like uplifting songs is really powerful. We felt it. I felt it on Sunday when we were at church. I felt like this is a really positive thing. I feel good singing these songs with all these people around me. But yeah, it's really bizarre doing that when the lyrics mean nothing to me. Yeah. That was a weird thing because like everything else, it felt the same. It like seemed the same. Everything about it was the same except that the lyrics didn't mean anything to me. And I sort of expected that worship would seem like really, really flat now, like since we didn't care about what we were singing about. But it didn't. It didn't seem flat to me. It seemed like almost the same. It seemed really meditative and it seemed like it felt spiritual, you know, it seemed like the same, but the words were just empty. So yeah, it's a weird experience. Well,
that's because the presence of God is still there, Joe, whether you believe or not.
I know that's probably what some Christians would say. That's probably what I would have said too, that I experienced the presence of God because God was there because of all the real Christians or something.
What happens when you're at like a secular concert and you feel the same? All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
So next thing up, you could feel the sermon coming, and the announcement man came out and he started to introduce the preacher who was going to come up on stage. And he got us so hyped. It was such a hypey introduction. And I think because this guy turned out to be very boring, but like he was trying to hype him up. You know, he was saying that last time he heard this guy speak, it was something that he like touched him so much, and still to this day he brings up in conversation like 2 times a week or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And that he knows that this preacher has something and he will speak directly to you. Yeah. Like he has something to say directly to you this morning. Like, okay, are you guys ready? Like, now give him a warm welcome. Yeah. Okay, so then.
Yeah. Well,
do you remember who came out? I don't remember who
I don't remember he's like the head of biblical scholarship for Hillsong or something. He was a guest speaker, so we didn't get to hear what's the other guy's name?
Carl Lentz.
We didn't get to hear Carl Lentz. Yeah, but we got to hear this Australian guy who came from there to start their new theological school in Arizona. And on his way, he stopped in New York to preach for that Sunday.
Oh, good on you for remembering.
I know.
Okay.
But yeah, the one thing I noticed right away, so yeah, you're right. He like hyped this guy up so much, and I was even hyped because I was like, oh, cool. This guy's like a theological scholar. Yeah. He's not just a whatever. Maybe he'll have something really interesting to talk about. And so this guy comes up and he first thing he does is he puts his grandkids on the PowerPoint, which we were like, what in the world is with pastors? Yeah, I don't know if you guys experience this, but like pastors always do that, like put their family on the PowerPoint and they talk about, oh, I'm so proud of my grandkids. And he was like, if you're a parent right now, keep going because grandkids are where the real reward is.
Yeah, like grandkids, they're way better than regular kids. Like just like the same jokes that grandparents always tell.
Right, yeah. And he talked about how much he loved his wife who was in the audience and how like beautiful she was. It was so weird.
Standard
like,
pastor stuff.
We hadn't heard this stuff in 4 years, like we were saying, and like everything was like exactly how I remembered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, same jokes, same everything. He opened up his sermon with a prayer, and one line I pulled out of that stuck with me was, he said, God, we thank you that this is not by accident and that each one of us is here today for a specific purpose. So that seems like an innocent enough saying, but if you're someone who's in the crowd feeling like lost in your life and some guy comes up with 1,500 people watching him and a spotlight on him and he's praying to some God that he seems to have some kind of super special connection with, and he's declaring that you're here for a reason and that there's a specific purpose that each person is in the room today, that stuff sinks in. It's like, it's a good speaking technique, honestly, because it totally will prime the audience like, oh, I need to listen because there's something like really specific for me today. Yeah.
It's hard because as a Christian, we believe this to be true. And that guy believes it to be true with I can't blame him for that.
Right.
That's what everybody wants. But it's strange now seeing it from this other point of view where for so long I felt that I had this like one purpose and this one meaning and maybe, maybe it's just not for me.
Yeah.
Like maybe I can go as far just to say maybe it's not for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not for you. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it kind of messed up our life, because now we needed to like completely reform our lives and figure out our new purpose. And so something like that maybe could make someone confused for a long time because they could feel that the church has a purpose for them, but then never like really get it clear.
Yeah.
Or never and kind of be stuck in the cycle that we were in of constantly rededicating our lives to Jesus to try to find our purpose in it. And,
Well, I mean, that's something that's been really hard for us to come out of because when I was a Christian, I felt like every single thing that happened in my life had some kind of eternal significance. Like everything I did, I thought was for a reason.
Like every
everything
smile
that happened to
that
me.
You smiled at a sandwich maker.
Yeah.
Giving you your lunch.
All those sandwich makers always smiling at me. And I always thought it was God who was doing that, So like sitting in a Sunday sermon as a Christian, of course I would have thought like I'm here for a specific purpose and God, the God of the universe, is literally trying to say something specific to me. I never would have considered like maybe it's just random chance that I'm in here. Or maybe the fact that this guy is here from Australia has no relevance to like my eternity. Maybe he's just here just because he was traveling through and it just happens to be this way. It doesn't have to be anything significant.
And maybe, just maybe, if you say in front of a large audience, I have something specific for you. You are in a hard place right now and you need the love of the Lord. That like you're going to hit someone who has that experience.
Everyone has that experience because as a Christian, I would always look for the significance in things, And so if someone tells you that they have a specific message for you, you can almost always find
a way to fit it into your life.
I totally could like pull something out of his sermon that like really hit specifically for me.
Yeah, it's relevant.
And as a Christian, I would have thought he was right. Like God did have something specific for me and this is what it was. Probably wasn't the same thing for you and probably wasn't the same thing for anyone else in the room. But like, if you truly believe that everything you do has like a purpose given by God, then it's really easy to find a purpose in that stuff,
So I feel like the main thing from like this is that in church, what he's saying is not wrong necessarily yet, but that it's not confined to only church and Christian circles.
Yeah,
is that if you have a speaker, they could speak something that directly has purpose to you, who has nothing to do with God.
Yeah.
And something like really hits you and you're like, whoa, I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
But it's like I feel like the nature of human beings.
Totally.
That we can say something and it resonates with someone else. And that's beautiful. And then you form a relationship and you're like, wow, we're not alone.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, think about us. We watch like some trash TV 90 Day Fiance and we will like stop it and have some long conversation about our marriage that's like really meaningful to us. And that it's just a TV show.
We just got some prophecy from 90 Day Fiance.
Right.
Finding meaning everywhere.
So you can find meaning anywhere is basically what we're saying, and it's not limited to God. So do you have any other thoughts about that? You want to just jump right into
No,
sermon?
let's talk about the sermon. This is long, so let's try to do it fast.
Yeah.
It was, oh my gosh, you guys, church is so boring.
Church is really boring. I don't miss that.
Yeah, we don't miss it at all. It's like taking notes. I was like, man, I hate this.
It's like going
Why did we say we're coming to church?
It's like going to a class at school that you don't really want to take, but you like have to take it.
But you feel you need to because you're a really good Christian kid.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I want to serve God.
Yeah. It was weird.
Before we did this episode, Joe told me to be like really delicate and kind. Am I doing okay?
I don't know. Only time will tell, my friend.
Okay. So, when he started, after showing his grandkids, he said something briefly about how he was saved as an atheist, studying science in school. Classic.
As a 16-year-old,
at age 16.
Right? Yeah.
And sure, we've talked about that before. Like, how can you be an atheist at 16? Like, you're not even fully formed your opinion of life yet.
Right.
So it's like, it was tricky to say that. I think it was kind of like, it was a tactic, I feel.
Yeah.
To sort of to show like, see, I've been through things.
See, I tried the other side.
I've tried the other side. Yeah. And he said then something else about like staying in church for the long haul. And he kind of said like, how many of you know that the longer you stay in church, the better it gets? Send your roots down deep. There are some benefits you'll find only a decade in. Stick around.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
that was kind of weird too.
Dang. Like, I was kind of like, this seems like, I don't know, like a tactic to keep people in.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I know that this man doesn't mean any harm, but like, as somebody who's trying to view like things from the outside, you know, it's kind of like, you just like locked that follower in for 10 years.
For a
like,
long time.
they're going to remember you saying that, and they're going to be like, I feel like really bad, but you know, he said that I would feel good around year 10, so I'm going to stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I think like he kind of got into, what the message was going to be about. And it was basically about seeds. Just like planting seeds and
it was
stuff.
the parable of the four soils.
Yeah.
That was a sermon.
He first like introduced like something about planting seeds. But then he like got into reading that parable, I think afterwards. But like I have written down, that he was talking about revival of the world. And it was funny when he said revival of the world. I was like, church never changes. They're always talking about revival.
Yeah. Cause he mentioned that someone like a couple months ago prophesied about Hillsong that revival was coming for the church.
Do you remember how many times that people would prophesy that over
I swear like every church I've
every
been to
Sunday
has said like, we got a prophecy, or like whoever, Angela prophesied that there's revival coming for our church, and all we need to do is like be obedient to God's word and to fast and pray to him to like bring about this revival. Churches say that all the time, but like, I don't know, maybe some crazy stuff is happening, but from my perspective, it seems like nothing ever really happens, at least not outside of that church, you know, like it seems like the world isn't actually really affected by these quote unquote revivals that are happening over and over again in every charismatic church. But it was weird when he said that. It kind of like, it really struck me, you know, and it, I don't know, piqued my attention because I've heard that stuff so many times. And as a Christian, I remember like kind of trying to force myself to believe that there was something to it, and like really trying to believe that revival was actually coming, even though we didn't see it. But now when he said it, it's like, I don't believe you.
I know.
You know?
It was just, I really like this experience looking back and hearing the same things that we took so seriously, and like, yeah. It feels like the outside world is never really affected by those revivals, and all it really does is just further entrench the people who already are attending the church, you know, for like get them excited,
and
hype them up. So he began to talk about the Bible as like a seed, like the word of God as a seed, and the living word. And when the words leap out of the page to you, they feel like you're being spoken to directly. And he mentioned the verse 1 Peter 1:23, which I thought was really funny because it's the verse that says born again, and it says, for you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and enduring word of God. And like, it was funny that he mentioned the verse that had the born again in it. I thought born again, and I was like, they know we're here.
Oh my gosh.
You know, for a
all the
second.
Lights turn on, like people surround us and take us out. Yeah.
And so with that, he began to talk about seeds, and I'm just gonna like go through like just that first intro until we get to like just the Bible verses that he went into. But so he says that like a seed is a packet of life. And he was saying that the Bible and a seed both produce new life, new character, new attitudes, new values. But it doesn't just produce life, it produces fruit. And so when he said that, I have kind of like a beef about that, because I really thought that now that I'm outside of Christianity, I would produce no fruit. And I wrote in my notes, this isn't limited to Christianity, like the fruit. And I feel like that's such a lie to believe that you can only produce good and produce the fruit inside this fold of people.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned that the fruit would be like obedience. And I was like, ouch.
That's
you
the
know,
fruit
like
is
the
like
fruit is obedience.
Yeah.
Obeying God and what he wants.
Obediencing God more. Obeying God more. I wrote down something similar too. He was saying like, you need to plant the word. You need to plant the seed, the word into a heart. and it will supplant our worldly desires and it will change you from the inside out. And I wrote down, like, no, that's not true. You can read the Bible all you want, but like, if you're changing, it's because you are changing yourself by supplanting your own human desires and only allowing yourself to follow the Bible.
Ooh,
like the
good,
Bible,
Joe.
you know, the book of the Bible itself is literally just words on a page, and it's not going to just like miraculously change you into a better person by just reading this, you know? Like, you read it and you obey it, and slowly over time you become a different person. You want to know what? If you read any of these books we've talked about, if you read some book about psychology or like healing from trauma, and you follow the principles that are in it, it's also going to change you from the inside out, just like the Bible. You know, there's nothing special, nothing spiritual or mystical about the words that are in the Bible. It's just, this is how it works to be a human. When you like learn some new information and you start applying it in your life, you change.
Changes you.
And it's great. I love that about it, but that's not limited to God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once again, I think like the biggest thing is like that it's all the things being said are not limited to the church.
Yeah.
It felt so special before.
Right.
You know, like not.
Yeah. He mentioned like, it's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. And I'm just, you know, it's like so crazy. I'm just thinking like, you are the one who's forcing yourself to become the Word. Like, you're the one who's deciding to change and to act according to the Bible.
Through discipline.
Like, it's not changing you. You are just changing your own mind. It's simple. It's really simple. And it's so much more simple to come at it from that perspective. Like, oh, if I just act differently and form new habits, I'm going to become a different person. That's so straightforward. Where the flip side is like, if I spend time letting the Word fall on the lovely good soil of my heart, and I pray to God enough, and I'm open, and I keep the devil out, then God will change me because I can do nothing on my own. That's like a really confusing and slow and counterproductive way to try to change your habits, you know?
I know.
It's clear to see that now. At the time, it seemed like that, of course, we need God to change. But yeah, at this point, it's like we can just change by ourselves.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel like we've experienced that. So like we've experienced change like in both camps, but more so in this.
Yeah. It's
so,
been
like,
a lot more natural and like effortless and less full of shame and guilt. Just changing because you decide to change, as opposed to changing because you're like constantly asking God to change you. Yeah.
The next thing I've written down is, this is so boring.
You just wrote that down. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so next up, he says, so like going back to the metaphor of the Bible and a seed, like the seed doesn't, you know, you don't just store the seed inside you, or, you know, you don't just eat the seed, or you don't gather them and put it in a silo, and you plant them. Just like, you know, you don't keep the Word of God inside you. You don't store it. You don't keep God inside you. You know, so this is when he starts going into the soil to be planted. It says, Jesus tells us the fruit is not guaranteed because it needs to be planted in the right soil. And I wrote in my note, once he said that, I wrote, guess what we'll read next?
That parable.
Yeah, and I thought again, like, they've been preaching on the same things over and over again, trying to make it relevant for now. This guy didn't even make it relevant for now. He just like basically, so, you know, anything that you can think of from this parable, the parable of the soils, it's what he said. It's exactly what he said.
I've heard like the exact same sermon 15 times in my life. And that you're right. Actually, I remember it at that time that, like Christians only have the Bible to preach from. So it's a really limited set of stories that are palatable.
I mean, the Bible is long and there's a lot to say about it, but like think about going to church like every single Sunday.
Well,
like,
and also
year
think
after
about
year,
like 60% of the Bible is like insane.
Oh yeah, you don't want to preach
talk about
from
that.
that.
You know,
yeah.
so there's a small section of stories that sermons are generally
palatable.
made out of that can be said in a public space without someone being like taken off the stage and going to prison.
That's true. You know? The next note I have, the next little fun note I have is, this sermon seems like it's for little kids.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
Did you?
Yeah. And it was. I mean, it's probably partially because we've heard this sermon so many times, but I would imagine that a lot of the people who are in that church have heard that sermon a lot of times too. If you've been Christian for more than 5 years, I'm sure you've heard a sermon about the 4 soils and how the word needs to fall on the fertile soil. And yeah, it was weird. It was like a sermon for little kids. And he kept doing that thing where he'd say like, can you say rocky soil? And everyone would say rocky soil. And then he'd say whatever,
something and then it would be really different because
Can you sing thorns? And then
our accents are different. And he's like, oh, you say that word differently than me. And then everyone would kind of laugh.
Yeah. They liked it.
So he had some points and like about the parable of the soils, and it's from Matthew 13:3-9. And like, he like really, I felt that he kind of like, dug deep to get these meanings out, or like these points are kind of, I like kind of felt like they were kind of like nothing points. Yeah. But the first one was learn what the word means and like learn what it really means. And then he said that he like inserted this like really sexist joke about a young wife and a young husband. And it was like, how many of you young husbands know that when your wife says, oh, our first anniversary is coming up, I don't want a present. That's not what it really means. Oh, yeah. Like learn what she really means. And then he's like, some of you husbands are like, what? Yeah, and everyone was laughing. I was like, that's so belittling.
You're in downtown Manhattan in like the most liberal possible area where like feminism is like widely accepted and marriage equality and all of that. And he's like making these weird jokes about like how,
I don't feel that spouses are I don't think we're like idiots anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, it was a very pastor joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, that happened. I kind of tuned out for a while.
But the other part of that point on the learn what it means, which I think had to do with one of the 4 soils. I don't remember which one, but he said something. He said like, when you want to know what the Bible is saying, what it really means to be a Christian, he said, Google is not your friend. He said, don't go to Google and look up like, what does this verse really mean? Go to the church, go to the community of God's people, because they're the ones who can best explain it to you.
I wrote that down too.
We looked at
Google
each other.
Google is not your friend.
What in the world?
Don't trust other outside sources. Go to the community of God's people. They have been wrestling with it.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yes. Right. Yeah. Really bizarre. I mean, that's like stuff we talk about all the time about how the church is a really closed community and they don't really want you to look to outside sources. But it was just weird to have this like professional leader of Hillsong talking to 1,500 of us, telling everyone don't Google Bible verses to find out what they mean.
Yeah.
It's just really weird.
I never know, like, sometimes coming out, I'm like, did everybody else experience this, or did I just limit myself? Like, who told me not to read other books? Did I just say I'm not reading any non-Christian material, you know? And then I'm, like, realizing now, like, when I see some Christian material, like, just online or whatever that people share, or now, like, specifically in church in a sermon, it's very quick, but it's just, like, I think it gets into your head, you know? Because if I would have heard that, I would be like, yeah, I know, like, Google's not going to tell me the right answer. It's, like, part of the world, and it's, you know, like, I want to go to people who are seasoned veterans and like reading the Bible. Like they really know what it means and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird.
It was weird to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing that he mentioned at this point was at one point he started talking about what the verse really meant in the Greek, which is a favorite technique of a lot of pastors to pull out some Greek words.
And it's super funny because we are reading that book, Godless by Dan, Barker. Yeah. And he mentioned that he could just throw out Greek words and no one would ask him anything about it.
Yeah. So we had already been talking about that idea. But so this guy started throwing out a couple Greek words and then he said, are there any Greeks in the audience? No one raised their hand. And then he kind of made a joke and said, oh, that's good. None of you guys will know if what I'm saying is right or not.
And I was like,
oh my gosh. Because I've always felt that. Like these pastors pull out a single Greek word and they say, well, like, actually, if you read this verse, this is what it really means because of the Greek. And
but it really doesn't help you understand the section better at all. It just like seems kind of like, what's the word? Like just a flaunt.
Yeah. It was, again, I honestly don't believe that this guy had any ill intentions. I think he's trying to speak the word of God as clearly as possible out of love and because he really cared about what he was doing and he believed it was the best way for these people to live their lives. Like, I'm not trying to fault him and say that he's like intentionally being a criminal who's leading people astray. But hearing him say this stuff it's hard to hear from an outside perspective. Because we're so like primed to catch that stuff and we're almost looking out for it, you know, when we're sitting and listening to this sermon. And so when he's just explicitly saying like, don't look up verses on Google. Don't worry about what I'm saying. Just trust me because I know you can't understand Greek anyways.
It's like, whoa,
dude, like, back off.
We're sheep again. We're sheep.
I know, it's so weird. Yeah, really weird.
Okay, second point, let the word go deep. So he gives this like example of when he was a teenage atheist, he was sexually active with his girlfriend and he read a verse about fornication and how fornicators will not inherit the kingdom of earth. And so then he needed to reshape the way he thought about life.
Yeah.
Will he allow his emotions to master him?
Yeah.
Let the word go deep.
Right.
Which, I don't know.
I wrote down here that I felt frustrated by this idea when I was a Christian, when people would say stuff like, let the word go deep, or like, let that word really sit in your heart. Because I always felt like, what do you actually mean? Like in human 21st century practical terms, what do you literally mean by what you're saying right now? And so what I wrote down for that point was I just felt like he didn't offer a single piece of any practical advice or like what to do. It was just like lame jokes and loosely related stories about him like fornicating a lot in college.
How we like to talk about it.
Yeah.
And also I think that the message there was don't have sex before marriage.
Yeah. So that was a little side message that was slipped in.
Yeah. Like to all of, we were sitting by exclusively young couples our age who I don't think were married.
No, they're definitely getting it on.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Number 3 was the thorny soil.
Keep the word the main thing. That was his point. Keep the word the main thing.
Yeah. And so...
Yeah, man. Even like as a writer, I just can't.
Right. So again, that's kind of an ambiguous thing. But he said, does that mean we shouldn't have desires or lives here or money? No, that would be dumb. That's what he said. I was like, okay. And he said, is Jesus saying to ditch the worldly stuff? No. That's what he said.
And then I wrote down in parentheses, actually, I feel like he is.
Yeah, like I feel like Jesus like literally says to ditch the worldly stuff. But okay, I'm like following along at this point. Yeah.
Allow the word to frame that part of your life.
Yeah. So the way he explained this in the end, he said that for every single area of your life, instead of putting that area of your life in competition with what the word says, build your life /marriage /wealth /kids /hobbies, etc. on the word. So
it's a lot of slashes.
You're basically saying to ditch the worldly stuff and like start with the Bible. You know, I mean, I feel like in the end, he was saying
make it the...
Yeah, like you need to make every part of your life about God.
He just says make it the main thing, though. Joe.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The main thing. At this point, I wrote, whoa, the band just started playing. And even though we did not like the sermon up until this point, I noticed that it made what he was saying sound more authoritative.
Yeah, totally. And like more revealed. Or
yeah,
like more,
yeah. And so I was wondering why they started playing, because he didn't seem like he was almost done.
Right.
And so then he like had one more point, which was the last soil, the good soil. And he wasn't saying much, and I'm like, why are they playing? This is weird. Did they mess up? And then I leaned over to Joe. Oh, I know what's happening. They're cutting him off.
Yeah, like they need to wrap him up.
Definitely cutting him off right now, because the last point was he just said like be good soil so you can produce fruits. Yeah, basically, and then that was it for him.
Yeah. Well, no. So the very last part of that was like a classic 90s altar call, where so the band's playing, and he said. I thought this was really interesting because being like outside of Christianity, I obviously haven't heard like a classic, farm-fed, grass-raised beef altar call before. And what he said was he said, I want you to understand that today you can have a new, fresh, clean slate. Like if I don't know what your past is like. I don't know what you've done in your life. I don't know if you feel like you've struggled, but today that can all be wiped away. You can start clean. You can start fresh today. And all you need to do is just pray along with me as I pray this prayer today.
Okay, wait.
God will give you a fresh start and a new life this morning. And
how did you feel during this part?
Okay, I was like, okay, every person in this room, that is going to sound appealing to.
Yeah.
Because like if anybody can start fresh today.
Didn't it sound appealing to you?
Yeah, it did. Well, actually, part of this, I like prayed along and I prayed to God, if you're real, I want to be as open as possible. Please like show yourself to me. I don't want to be doing this podcast, like sending people to hell. If you're real, please reveal yourself to me. I'm like honestly being open. Of course, I didn't feel anything. I honestly tried to be open. But yeah, hearing him do this altar call, it's like, yeah, this is really compelling. If you're coming to this church for a first time and now this guy on the stage who seems to have a spiritual connection with this invisible God is telling you that this invisible God will give you a new life starting today. And all I have to do is like say some words in my head while this guy is saying some words in my head, then yeah, sign me up. Yeah. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So he did the whole thing. He told everyone to raise their hand if they prayed the prayer, and that way he could count the number of salvations so that they probably could like report on it at their board meeting.
I don't remember that. Wait, I need to go back. I need to say how I felt.
Oh, okay,
because
sorry.
when he started doing this altar call, like I immediately remembered like how I always felt that I needed to do it. I was like, wait, do I need to do it?
Yeah. Oh,
and I wrote down, I felt called out. I felt called out. Because also we're like covertly there researching. I always feel so guilty in church. Like, do I need to rededicate as a Christian? I felt I needed to do this every day. I never felt safe, was always scared of not like hearing God or being with God, or he didn't save me, you know, because people would always, because there was always that thing, like, are you saved? Are you really saved? Are you really truly saved?
Yeah.
You know, and we get it still, but now it's just like, okay.
I remember when I was Christian and people would have altar calls, I, like, towards the end, I felt pretty secure in my salvation, but I would always pray along in such a way that I, like, wasn't really praying the sinner's prayer.
Yeah.
But I was also saying, like, God, I'm so glad you're already in me. Like, you know, kind of like,
God, you got me, right?
Remember, God, like,
you're with me.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because in this altar call, I think, like, because of just how modern church is, and in New York City, he didn't have anybody come up, like, which is how our church would be.
Yeah.
You know, he just had everybody sit, and he said a prayer and told everyone to repeat after him so that maybe nobody would feel embarrassed. But I didn't repeat after him because I was like, for the first time, I'm not going to feel guilted into repeating, like, this guy's prayer, because I don't need to rededicate my life to Christ.
Right.
And, like, it felt really good. Joe over there is trying to see if he could get saved again. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. So anyway, so that happened, and the band comes up to like they started playing a hype song, like we talked about in the worship episode. But then it was like really short. It said the lyrics I wrote were "Nothing stands between us." They repeated that 2 times, like over and over again.
Yeah. And
it was short because people started leaving, and the guy comes up at the end, like, and he's like, you know, say it's an important time in the church, and he wants to encourage us to get planted, you know, not like to Google the word of God, but to join a connect group. Yeah. He mentioned it again. He mentioned the Google thing. You know, it was a little bit of a plug for their Bible studies, their connect groups at the end. He was like, just give me a minute, everyone, because everyone was kind of leaving.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a strange experience. It was like more of a concert than a church, because like I felt that it was strange that people were rushing out right at the end. Yeah, you know. Yeah, like nobody cared. Yeah, like everyone's like, I went to church. See ya.
I just plugged it, like got their time in, checked that box, and yeah. The whole thing was just it was a weird experience going back to church. And I felt like my main takeaways is that it was like a lot more boring than I think I ever would like admit that it was when I was Christian.
Is a good word.
Because I don't know. I probably felt like it was boring before, but I wouldn't have really let myself think that because I thought it was so important to my life. Is really boring. And like the sermon, at least this guy's sermon, and again, maybe he's like not always a preacher. Maybe that's not his specialty, but I felt like his sermon was like so basic and anti-intellectual, and it was weird to sit through like an hour and 15-minute talk from this guy, which I felt like was just going against my intellect the whole time.
Is that how long it was?
Oh, maybe it wasn't that long. Yeah, actually, I don't know how long the whole service. It wasn't super, super crazy long or anything. No, but anyways, like it was long. And then, the worship time, it was weird sitting through that and feeling like this kind of spiritual-esque experience during it, but like not having any stake in what we were singing about and not caring about the lyrics at all. It was just a bizarre experience, but I feel like I almost want to recommend, if you feel like you could go to church without getting super triggered by it, that it was a really healing experience for me because it, I don't know, I feel like more separate from it now. I think I was worried going back into it that I was going to get really swept up in the feelings, and I don't know what I was worried about going into it actually.
No, I was a little worried too. Like maybe that they had some secrets that you like could have applied to your life that would have made you a better person. Right. Which is what they claim.
Right. But it was, I don't know. I feel like everything we've been doing, everything we've been talking about was so perfectly confirmed by going to church that I'm like really glad we went.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Also, it really took Hillsong off a pedestal for me.
Yeah.
Like, we thought that the worship would be way better.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't do more songs. I'm kind of sad they didn't.
Yeah. It was just like any other, like, non-denominational sort of charismatic leaning church that I've been to. It was, like, not really anything special. So yeah, if you're Christian and you've been wanting to go to Hillsong, it's your life mission, then you might be in for a bit of a letdown.
But try it.
Come
to church next Sunday with us.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I took some pictures, and I took a bulletin, or I don't know what you call it now, but just like a little pamphlet we got at church, and I can take pictures of those, and I'll put them up on our Instagram and up on our Facebook page. So you can see too. It was really a cool experience.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we don't have to do it anymore.
It's checked off our bucket list.
Yeah, let us know if you guys have gone to church recently, what your experience has been, what it's felt like to go kind of back into the old territory and just experience that from a different perspective. So yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and if you really, really love us, you can find us on Patreon as well.
Yeah.
But otherwise, have a good week, and we'll see you next time.